Welcome in, race fans, to this edition of Through the Gears presented by Front Stretch. I'm your host, Tino Pattigno, and I couldn't be more excited to get back into the racing action and betting action for this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. We're turning left and right in this one, and it's going to be a great show, a great race, and there's a lot of drivers that I think present some value on the board here in this one as we get back to some road course racing, which we haven't seen last since COTA earlier in this season. Before we do that and get into everything we have to talk about for this weekend's episode, I gotta give a special shout out to my man Kyle B8, who commented on the last video, and this one was a good one because he said we made a great choice by not betting on Kyle Busch last weekend, and that proved to be true as the woes continue in this season for Kyle Busch. We'll get into that a little bit more as we go through this episode. And also shout out to Marcus, who commented and said he predicted Christopher Bell would win, and he did. And then he also predicted Christopher Bell would win more races this season, like last weekend at WWT. And man, Marcus, you were right on the money until Bell's engine just had some trouble there at the end. I think for sure Bell would have been able to pass Blaney and get that win. So sorry about that one, buddy. But let's get more and more into it and talk and explain more and break down some of the odds here on the board in this episode of Through the Gears as we go through the gears. First up is going to be the recap from WWT Raceway, and this one was a tough race to swallow for us because of everything that transpired. Some of the picks there, like we had Ty Gibbs, Tyler Reddick, a big eye was on Martin Truex Jr. as well. We were talking about the MTJ train going into that weekend, and that we've been on it. We've been really riding him consistently for the last few weeks now, hoping the win would come. He's shown speed at tracks lately, and that team has been up there racing for wins and capable of winning races in that 19 car, and he just keeps letting us down, and that's what happened there for Martin Truex Jr. So that was a tough one, especially with the value that he presented. That was one of my favorite plays, but so was Ryan Blaney, and Ryan Blaney was just one lap short of gas to make us get back to victory lane. We were looking for revenge. We had it. And as I alluded to in the intro, Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney put on a hell of a show. Awesome racing between the two of them. And honestly, this was one of the although it was a surprise winner in Austin Cindric, I believe he was 22-1 to win that one after practice and qualifying, which with how good that car practiced and qualified up front towards it at least, we know that those odds were still pretty big for a driver in Austin Cindric, who, great guy. I've talked to him myself. He's awesome. He's a great driver. He's worked hard, and I am a fan of his. But I mean, the struggles, they've been there for him this season. He only had 2 top 15 finishes the entire year going into that weekend's race at WWT Raceway. So I'm happy he got the win. Congrats to you, Austin Cindric, and it was great to see, but it was also a miracle that Ryan Blaney ran out of gas for him, and he was able to steal that one there. But going back to Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney, I think that was a great battle. It was a great race. It was great to see a little bit of fuel mileage, right, playing out towards there at the end. And those type of races are great to see for the sport. Just brings another level into its strategy and, doing things right. It's all about the little things. If they would have put an extra can or another, just a little bit of more fuel, one lap more fuel for Ryan Blaney during his pit stop, he would have won that race. So that's a tough one because he was our bet. He was the main guy. We were focused. Him and MTJ were the top two that I talked about, that I was betting on before practice and qualifying last week. If you guys tuned in there. So Ryan Blaney was the pick. He was there. It was there. What are you going to say? It was there, but it just ultimately didn't happen. Austin Cindric pulls through. And let's get back to victory lane this weekend at Sonoma. With that being said, some betting strategies and Sonoma prep. It is a road course with 12 turns. It's going to be 2 miles long. There is steep elevation and downhill hard braking zones. And that's why I like this track a lot, because it is a really veterans type of racetrack. It is also going to be a fast road course race, and that's going to be important because what I mean by that is the repave that was had at this track, Sonoma and some types of road courses, and even any type of racetrack, when it wears and tears, you get certain drivers. For instance, Martin Truex Jr., he's able to lock in and really find what he can do the most to make it work at this type of racetrack because of the character it has in it, whether it's the bumps or grooves or certain spots on the racetrack where over time, with him racing for as long as he has, I feel like he's just gotten better and better here and been able to dominate races. And we saw that at this track last year. So now with the repave, how is that going to affect him? Well, we're going to have to see as this weekend unfolds with practice and qualifying. I will say at the time of this recording, I was able to get some of the stats from practice. So that was huge to me, I think, because anytime we can use that in our data and our research, it is going to help us because now we can look at numbers, especially after a repave, and see who's fast here at this track. I do believe Martin Truex Jr. is a driver to look out for in this one. Once again, I know if the MTJ train is coming to a stop, it's going to have to be here at Sonoma if he doesn't get a win. So this is the last chance for Martin Truex Jr. Write it down. He came into this one as a favorite at plus 600 to win it. And, you know, I think he has a good shot here. We'll get a little bit more into that for the odds breakdown. But shout out to Ryan from iFantasy Race. Honestly, just printed out his little speed chart here. That he puts out. Great work from him. I always love looking at his stats and data, and it helps me help you guys win every single weekend, or at least try to at least. So going into that and some prep, obviously we talked about Martin Truex Jr., but what other drivers can we look for to be strong at Sonoma specifically? You know, some of the tracks that it's comparable to are the road courses, but it's going to be a faster one. So Watkins Glen is a good example. The Roval is another one that we can take into account for. Martin Truex Jr. as well has 4 wins at this racetrack, and we talked about how dominant he's been. Well, the rest of the field combined has 4 victories. That's another thing that we need to note heading into this one. So when we look at the other drivers that are fast here, Chris Buescher is one of them. Michale McDowell is another. Kyle Busch, Kyle B8, if you're tuning in now in this point. Kyle Busch, keep an eye on him, I think. He ran strong here last year. Obviously wasn't able to hold off Martin Truex Jr. there at the end, but finished in second place. So, I mean, if Kyle's going to be able to turn it around, I think he has got a good shot here. And I really do feel like that goes to show the type of veteran racetrack that this is. Some drivers, whether their car is handling great or poor, whatever the case may be, Kyle Busch is a great example of, even if you're struggling throughout the season, you get to a veterans racetrack where it is, you know, a racer's mentality, and you're going to have to just outwork the other guy, whether it's in your craft or in the corners or whatever the case may be throughout the race, as long green flag runs happen. Now, there are stages here in this race as well. There weren't last season, but my point is, I feel like that's where other drivers can gain on some of those who may not be able to do so. Kyle Busch, great example. Joey Logano, Chris Buescher, Chase Elliott, AJ Allmendinger, Michael McDowell, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and Ross Chastain. That's your top 10 from last season at this race. And I'm getting excited about that because I think it's going to be very similar heading into this one this year. And I mean, at the speed chart, I was reading it off. That's exactly those top guys that I just listed who finished inside the top 10 last year are some of the fastest drivers at this track consistently. Let's get into the odds breakdown and talk a little bit about what the sports books are saying out there. Obviously, be sure to price shop when possible. I'm going to be talking about DraftKings like I do in every episode because they're the official sports book of NASCAR. So before practice today, we were looking at Martin Truex Jr. as the favorite at plus 600, Ty Gibbs plus 750, William Byron at plus 750 as well. We saw Tyler Reddick up there, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin also in the mix in terms of the top guys that was presenting us value in the favorites margin and things like that. Now, after practice, here's where things are very important. Kyle Larson's your new favorite. He's at plus 400. Ty Gibbs and William Byron are still the next two in that spot, both at plus 800. Now, Tyler Reddick, Chase Elliott, AJ Allmendinger are your next 3. Well, where's MTJ? He is plus 1,100. I love that value, and I even loved his value when he was, I mean, I didn't love it necessarily, but I did still feel like he was the guy to bet on when he was plus 600 earlier today at the time of this recording. Christopher Bell, Michael McDowell, Ross Chastain range from plus 1,400 to plus 1,600. Chris Buescher at plus 1,800. These are all guys. These are all drivers that I feel like are capable of winning this race, and I feel like that's huge to note with how their values are at now post-practice. Now, obviously, things will change after qualifying as well and as the weekend continues to unfold, but if we look at this now and where the board is at, this is something I'm capitalizing on today, and even after practice and qualifying, once they completely cycle out and we're ready to go green on Sunday, that's something where and that's something that I do as well. If we're talking about an odds breakdown here to continue on with that, is sometimes I wait until Sunday right before the green flag, make sure I get all the data I can, and then make my picks there if I'm not too sure on a driver already. Now, if you guys, to make sure you don't miss out on any of those extra picks that I do give out at Tino, Pattigno, all throughout the weekend, I'm updating and producing content for you guys there about some NASCAR betting picks and action that is going on. But in this one, it's Martin Truex Jr. who stands out to me. Ty Gibbs as well at plus 800. I mean, I know he's yet to get a win in the Cup Series, but you got to imagine it's coming here soon. And now another thing I need to mention is with the green type of racetrack, with it being repaved, I think that's going to help him. He's also racing in the Xfinity Series race on Saturday. Another thing that's something that I look at big time when I'm betting on drivers, because those extra reps you're going to be getting. I know the cars aren't the same, but it's the same racetrack. And that to me, I feel like can only benefit him. We did see it last year. I watched the entire race back from last year and doing my research for this race this weekend. And there was one mishap when that happened with Daniel Suarez, who raced in the Xfinity Series race, then raced on the Cup Series side on Sunday. And he actually missed a shift because the cars are different. So, I mean, that was sort of a freak accident, I could say. Maybe muscle memory played a factor there when it shouldn't have. But aside from that, I think Xfinity, when drivers race in Xfinity, especially a young guy like Ty Gibbs, I think that experience can only help him in this one. So that's a driver I'm looking at. Michale McDowell plus 1,500 as well. He was one of the guys in 2023 that had the most points earned on a road course. Now, Toyota specifically as well. Now, he's a forward driver, but if we're talking about for manufacturers, the most points earned was from all the Toyota drivers. We're talking Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, Martin Truex Jr., all playing major roles in that. And Ty Gibbs as well. Ty Gibbs raced well on road courses last year. So from the odds breakdown point of view, another thing I need to note is there was a tire test here earlier this year, and that was the drivers that went to that: Martin Truex Jr., Ross Chastain, and Josh Berry. Now, Josh Berry could have a strong run, I'm sure, but I'm definitely looking at the first two drivers, and Martin Truex Jr. and Ross Chastain in this one. I just talked about reps. Well, they were racing on the repaved Sonoma, and I feel like it's just an advantage. And we saw that, obviously different circumstances, but at North Wilkesboro Speedway, Joey Logano did the test there. So did Ty Gibbs. And what did they do? Lead every lap basically and win their all-star races. So keep that in mind when we're looking at the odds here. You really need to be aware of the types of drivers and the speed that they can bring based off their experience at this track. Two other drivers I'm going to note because I won't be talking about them for the outright winner segment. Not too much, at least right now. It's going to be Will Brown and Cam Waters. They're two supercar drivers joining us in the field for this one, and it's going to be exciting to see them in action because if we're going to break down practice as well, Will Brown in third. He'll be racing in the 33 car, and that's another thing too is SVG was able to go out and win. Why not any of these two guys? I feel like the value could be there. I mean, for Will Brown, right now, he's at plus 2,500, 25-1 to win this one. Why not throw a little bit on him? If SVG can do it, and these guys, and SVG's actually spotting for him in this race as well, so that's cool to see. But why not? Why can't these guys go out and get it done? And then Cam Waters in the 60 car, he actually spun out in practice, ended up there in the grass. So just something to keep in mind here. But in terms of drivers that looked strong in practice and looked strong on the board here, Ross Chastain is probably the driver that stands out to me the most. I'll get into him a little bit more in the outright winner segment, but just his value right now at plus 1,600 at the time of this recording, Chris Buescher as well. I'm looking at, I know this is a veterans type of racetrack and you need a dominant car and things like that. And who knows how the racing is going to play out with this repave. But Michale McDowell, Ross Chastain, Chris Buescher, the values they're at right now from plus 1,400 to plus 1,600, I think is great value because of the type of speed they have brought to road courses in the past and where they're at so far this year and in this race weekend specifically. All right, now let's get into the outright winner segment. Let's give the people what they want, and that's get back to victory lane here, because I mentioned we had a great streak going, almost 6-7 races won in a row. And now, Coke 600 gets rained down, okay. And then WWT Ryan Blaney, just ultimate bad beats happening to us. Let's lock in some outright winners. All right, guys, time for some outright winners. I'm going to give them to you, and hopefully they come through for us this week. Who am I looking at right now after the first practice and as we get more and more into the weekend? Well, first off, it's going to be Toyota love. I mentioned this before, and the Toyotas and how they dominated road courses last season, and that was a big improvement on what they had in 2022. Well, this race is called the Toyota Save Mart 350. And I think that's a huge deal, because since they're sponsoring the race, they're going to want their cars to perform well as also. So Ty Gibbs is one driver that I'm looking at, plus 800. I do think he can go out and get his first career win. But Martin Truex Jr., just his dominance at this racetrack cannot be overshadowed. If he gets his 5th victory at this racetrack, he'll tie Jeff Gordon. And with how close they've been able to be up front and potentially win races so far this season, there's no reason in my mind where he can't go out and win this, and especially being at the test at this racetrack as well. Maybe he's slow in practice, maybe he doesn't qualify up front. MTJ is known for just meticulously driving through the field. Another thing too is stages. That's going to be, an impact to some of these drivers here as well. So MTJ right now plus 1100. Ty Gibbs, those are my top 2 that I'm betting. Whenever I would watch this video before the race, whether it's, right now or later on Sunday morning, whenever you guys are tuning in, I just know I'm betting on those 2 drivers, and I have already. So those are 2 guys I have on my list. And when we shaped this betting card, I did want it to be a little bit more Toyota heavy because of everything I mentioned there. But Michael McDowell, Ross Chastain, Chris Buescher, those guys cannot be overshadowed. I will also mention Christopher Bell is another driver I have my eye on. I'm not going to be placing a bet on him just yet. I want to see where he qualifies. He did have a lot of speed at this racetrack last season, but let's continue on. Michael McDowell won the Indy Road Course last season. Has been great in terms of speed consistently every week, not just even on the road courses. He's always been up there. Can he get a win in this one? I feel like he's going to need to here if he wants to make the playoffs. Plus 1,500 for him. I like that value there. And I think with how the Fords have been performing, why not McD? Why not Chris Buescher? If anything, I am more on those guys because of their value than some of the other Toyota drivers like Denny Hamlin or even a Tyler Reddick who's dominated road courses in the past. I feel like for the number that we can get them at, and where the Fords have just turned a corner now where I believe they're going to consistently stay hot. We saw with Team Penske at WWT Raceway last weekend. Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, Austin Cindric were 1, 2, 3 at one point. And this is a Ford camp where we saw they were struggling throughout the entire season so far. Well, that changed once we got to the midway point, once Brad Keselowski put Ford back in victory lane. Joey Logano won the All-Star race. Austin Cindric wins at WWT. Chris Buescher is a driver that I think can break through here. And if it's not him, maybe Michael McDowell. And if we're talking to Chevy, the only driver Chevy-wise, you got the Larsons and the Byron, sure. Chase Elliott, he's great. But Ross Chastain showed a lot of speed in practice. I think this repave will help him specifically, especially how he raced at COTA when he did get his victory there. So Ross Chastain, 16-1 right now. I think that's great value for the driver that is hungry. And Daniel Suarez won here in 2022. Do not forget that. I think that can benefit him despite it being the old track. I still think maybe some data from there or anything that team may be able to use to help Ross get back into victory lane could be used this weekend. In terms of guys for more value, those are everyone I mentioned there. That's what I'm putting my money on. The Toyota drivers I'll do now. I'm already at the time that you're watching this video. And for the other 3 guys, maybe I'll wait a little bit just to see if I can pick 1 or 2 out of the 3 there, as I only want to pick 3 to 4 outright winners so we don't end up losing more money than we gain, obviously, in the end. Drivers I would keep an eye on, Kyle Busch, 25-1. He still needs to prove it to me in terms of him actually winning a race now. I wanted to get ahead of that win and really be able to win with Kyle Busch at the same time that he wins his first race, the season. But at this point now, he's let us down so many times and he's been so inconsistent so far this season. I can't bet on Kyle Busch, but 25 to 1 is good value for a driver who finished second in this race last year. You can't deny that. Joey Logano's another one. Raced well here last year, 25 to 1 for him as well. Daniel Suarez is 50 to 1, and that's really where I'd stop looking at value for drivers. I just don't think, with how meticulous or how much you need to be on your toes at this racetrack and really be locked into your craft. I just can't really see an upset winner. That's just what it is. It could happen, but aside from the drivers we mentioned, that's really all I got in terms of outright winners for this one. Shorter segment here for the prop bets. The odds aren't available right now, so I can't give you guys any specific odds or numbers based off of the prop bets, but I can reference what I had seen before practice, and that was not too much value for top 10s. If anything, I would definitely throw something on Cameron Waters there or Will Brown, one of the supercar guys to get a top 10. I can see that storyline playing out here this weekend. But aside from that, there's no real driver that can be of plus money to make us that much money for a top 10 finish. Maybe like a Justin Haley, who is a sneaky road course racer and could potentially be there at the end. The other thing is turn 11, now having that inside wall and not just the tire barriers could provide for more cautions and wrecks. And we can see drivers that maybe wouldn't be in a top 10 be there. I know one driver that I did mention on my SiriusXM NASCAR radio segment was Chase Briscoe to get a top 10. He was plus 350 at the time to do so. Chase is a good road course racer, and I think he has a shot to be able to be there at the end. In terms of top fives, that's where I'm heavy on this week so far. I'm looking at Truex, Michael McDowell, Chris Buescher, all the guys that I'm essentially betting on to win this race. I'm going to also pick to get a top 5 in this one. It's going to be the same guys that I mentioned to you in the outright winners. I mean, the value was there for most of them at the time that I did bet on them, or at least thought about it or saw the odds earlier in this one. So to me, I think that's a direction I would go down for prop bets, is looking at who you guys want for an outright winner, understanding it's a road course and anything could really happen. If there's a late race, restart or anything like that, if there's an overtime finish, we could see some madness there. So sort of protect yourself. Don't put everything on the outright winners there, and then be able to potentially save something if, one of your outright winners gets taken out and only is able to finish inside the top 5 there at the end. The final time, I'm going with my favorite play being Martin Truex Jr. I know I've said it so many times this season, but the value that he presents every single week, I feel like a broken record talking about him. Will this be the last week we bet on him? And honestly, I hope it is, because he's just let us down so many times in terms of being an outright winner. Right now at plus 1100, after coming into this weekend as the favorite, after being the top guy in terms of total speed, after testing here as well, he's got to be my favorite play based off the number they're giving us. Now, there could be some other drivers out there that upset, like I mentioned, Michael McDowell, Ross Chastain. Keep an eye out for Buescher. Ty Gibbs could get his first win. But in terms of overall favorite value and my favorite play, it's got to be MTJ, especially at a track that he's dominated at before. So keep an eye on him to get the job done in this one. All right, guys, so that'll do it for this edition of Through the Gears. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, everything in that nature. If you do leave a comment, you'll get shouted out in the next video. I appreciate everyone who does like, comment, and share. It really means the world to me. Be sure to follow me at Tino Pattigno for more NASCAR betting content, and be sure to stay tuned to the Stock Car Scoop, which comes out after every race on Sunday from the Front Stretch Podcast Network, as they will break down everything you guys need to know following the action on the track, and they'll be able to give you a little bit more insights since we have a great team at the track covering the races and talking to the drivers there. Thanks so much again for tuning in. I'm looking forward to getting back into victory lane, drinking that sweet wine, and making some money this weekend at Sonoma. So I'll see you guys next week as we go through the gears.